Ayo Mahdi.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Ma'am Ayu as lecturer. Thank you for the opportunity that has given to us. We are Affirmative team. We would like to deliver our arguments about the sexual harassment has nothing to do with the way the victim dresses. There are 4 speakers in our team. The first speaker is me, and there are also Alycia, who will help me to strengthen my argument. And the second speaker is Devia, and the last speaker is the one who will conclude our argument is Shofa. I am the first speaker in Affirmative team. Absolutely agree. But before I deliver my arguments, I would like to give you a little definition of sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is an unwelcome sexual advance, unwelcome request for sexual favors, or other unwelcome conduct of sexual natures, which is make a person feel offended, humiliated, or intimidated, where a reasonable person would anticipate the reactions and circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, besides that, I will deliver some arguments regarding the emotions. The reason why I strongly agree with emotion is because after I study about the issue, I become to know the sexual harassment and violence actually appears almost every day. And according to the comments from within 24 hours, 35 women were victims of sexual harassment. It shows what actually must be controlled is the mind of perpetrator, not the way of victim process. The vice chairman, Mariana Amiuddin, even said, it's not her thoughts, it is the culprit we should be concerned about, because every woman has been sexually abused her entire life. It from the data we found, the sexual abuse of a woman has nothing to do with the causes, but it's true of the all women. Clothing is that way of causes harassment. It's in addition to the visuals or visual contact. The perpetrator may also act as a harassment by holding or feeling the victim. So I absolutely agree that sexual harassment has nothing to do with the way the victim stresses, but it's a pure come from the perpetrator of sexual crimes. I invite my teams to strengthen my argument. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mahdi. My name is Alycia, and I'm the fourth speaker. I will help Mahdi with the argument. I agree with the motion because clothes is not correlated with sexual harassment, but the stigma that society have. The issue of the stigma of superior men and women as inviters to the act of rape is still strongly inherent in our society. Sexual crimes are often accused of being the result of the woman action, so it is not surprising that when a rape occurs, the victim tends to blame herself, regret for wearing less clothes, regret for coming home at night alone, and so on. From Indonesia online feminism article sharing platforms, feminist says that rape culture in Indonesia cannot be crushed by castration and execution of commuters. The only way to stop it is to break the circles of the elements that contain in rape culture. These elements are physical, mental, and cultural violence, as well as the stigma that confines the mindsets. Stigma can be experienced by both men and women. For example, the assumption that rape is the result of a woman's fault, then unknown men are dangerous, and therefore, women should be careful of them. This is what ultimately creates a stigmatized rape on the mindset of women and men. This kind of thinking must be stopped. However, women and men also have the right to live calmly and feel equal without being haunted by stigma paranoia. By Najila Shihab, an education activist and founder of Cikal School, reminded us that we also need to open our eyes to avoid misconceptions that often occur in our society. The parents feel that rape will not happen to their family, but we can see on news a lot of sexual violence is committed by close people such as family. Likewise, the assumption that sexual violence is only committed by men, even though it is not uncommon for women to be involved in it. Stop blaming the victim or victim blaming. This is because many victims of sexual harassment do not wear open clothes. They do cover their body. Even some of the victims were minors whose clothes were clearly not inviting. That's for that's from me. I invite the other team to respond our arguments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the share. Introduce myself, my name is Dhia Salsabila, a negative team, and speaker one. And I completely disagree with the affirmation team's argument, which states that the victim's clothes have nothing to do with case of sexual harassment. There is also the case where the perpetrator of sexual harassment did not intently have the desire or intention to do sexual harassment. However, this desire arises because the victim is wearing clothes that are made inappropriate, identically creating a desire for the perpetrator to commit harassment. The affirmative theme also draws on Komnas Perempuan, where everyone knows that in fact it will defend women. Of course, no matter how the victim is treated, they will not care as long as the one being harassed is a woman. They will definitely defend her. This is very bad be said because it is only seen from one point of view. If the affirmative team really believes that the why the victim is present has nothing to do with sexual harassment, then let me give a real example. Based on the news that I read from the public about 10 countries with the highest rape the rates in the world. The United States is in the first rank of countries with the highest rape case. The U.S. Bureau of Justice states that 91% of rape victims are women and nearly 99% of rapists are men. Everyone knows that in the United States, most people, parents of especially women, dress very openly because the promote freedom of expression. From this, we can see that there is a correction between sexual harassment and the why the victim does. Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia, every woman will leave the house must cover all of their body with loose clothes, and of course, from the chin list, that I mentioned above, Saudi Arabia was not included in it. This is another clear example that the way people dress affect the percentage level of sexual harassment. Once more, I said the sexual harassment has something to do with the way of the victim dresses. That is all, and thank you. And I will argument pro is Devia.
Okay, thank you, Salsa, for the time. So hello everyone, I'm Devia Maharani, and I'd like to respond to Salsa's argument. But before that, let me talk briefly about my point of view on this motion. So I personally really agree with this motion because from my own opinion, the statement about sexual harassment occurred because of the way the victim does is formed because of the paradigm that exists among the society, which assumes that the majority of sexual harassment occurs because of things such as clothes that are too revealing, women who walk alone in quiet places, and who are unable to fight the perpetrator because they are considered willing to do it, and sexual harassment that usually occurs at night. And in response to Salsa's argument, from my point of view, what Salsa stated earlier about the desire arises because the victim is wearing clothes that are deemed inappropriate, indirectly creating a desire for the perpetrator to commit harassment was wrong. Because after I read several articles about sexual harassment and got to know the evidence from some researchers on this issue, it turns out that the way each person dresses truly has no effect on cases of sexual harassment that have occurred. And to prove it, I will tell the results of research on a survey of sexual harassment conducted by Koalisi Ruang Publik Aman in 2018. So KRPA explained that the majority of victims of sexual harassment did not wear revealing clothes when experiencing this unpleasant tragedy. Harassment occurred to those who wore skirts and long pants, about 18%, those who wore hijab, about 70%, and long sleeve shirt, about 16%. And the survey results also showed that when victims experienced social harassment, the majority occurred during the day was about 35%, and during the evening about 25%. And there are also some cases of violence and sexual harassment that have occurred in Indonesia, which can prove that the way to dress truly has no effect on this issue. problems, such as what happened to the Sabil Urosyad Islamic Boarding School in Batu Kuung Village, pada Rincang District, Serang, Banten. So it was suspected that one of the boarding school teachers molested the female students. And in addition, a similar thing happened in Palembang, where a case of sexual abuse committed by a Quran teacher against a student who was still second grade of middle school under the pretext of checking the victim's breathing. So from the research results, as well as several examples of cases in Indonesia that have occurred and which I have mentioned earlier, I can loudly say and conclude that the paradigm that I have mentioned at the beginning and also what Salsa has stated earlier really does not affect the occurrence of sexual harassment. That's all my argument. I will invite the opposite team to give their argument. Thank you.
My name is Wijaya, and I would like to respond to the affirmative team's argument. As my teammate said before, clothing has something to do with sexual harassment because it is indeed an invitation for sexual predators to do such things. Despite the fact that there is a survey and a lot of people speak up about clothing have nothing to do with sexual harassment, but we can ignore that the clothing can be a magnet to sexual predators to do so. As I found in the website, shows that there is a father who looked his stepdaughter who only 15 years old because he was tempted by the beauty of victim's body, who often wears minimal clothes when he is at home. He said that I made a mistake because I often saw the victim wearing tight clothes and the victim was so big, so I dared to molest her 4 times, he explained. And also, as the affirmative team said before, about the cases which are pedophilia case, for your information, according to neurobiology of social behavior in 2015, pedophilia is defined as a persistent sexual interest in prepubescent children as evidenced by an adult sexual fantasy, urges, and goal-directed sexual behavior. So it is a psychological disorder to have interest to children or kids. So if we're talking about pedophilia, of course, the cause is not a problem to them because they have psychological disorder. Their only main goal is to fulfill their sexual fantasies to the kid and not to an adult, no matter how tight the clothes are on them. And if we're talking about the cases that I've showed about the father who loved his stepdaughter only 14 years old, I mean, the father had no psychological disorder and purely because he was tempted by the beauty of the victim's body on her tight or minimal clothes. These 2 cases are different in terms of interest targets and how to handle. So my point is, the victim clothes indeed are not the problem for people who suffer from pedophilia because their only main goal is to fulfill their sexual fantasies to the kids, not to an adult, no matter how tight or minimal clothes are on them. And for the people who had not suffered from pedophilia, I think it can be inferred from the tight minimal clothes that the victim is wearing. From this, it shows that you can make a conclusion from the cases that you don't know what it was all about. And also, I don't have to show a survey or something. We all know that there are many girls on social media. They wear hijab, long pants, long sleeve shirt, and everything, but they also show their body because all of that are tight. And maybe they also do that in real life. This thing may be because of why the numbers of victims of sexual harassment that wearing all kinds of not revealing clothes is high in the survey that the affirmative team said. I know we can blame the victim because of what they're wearing, and it is completely the predator's fault to have such a horrible personality and have to commit such a horrible thing. And also, I agree they have to pay the right price, but we can't do anything about other people's personality because that's who they are. And I think they can only change from themselves only by deepening the knowledge of religion or get closer to God or etc. Also, I heard they say that all kinds occurs because of the opportunity. That the survey that affirmative team shows about the most time the sexual harassment occurs, I think it is proof nothing as long as you still wear minimal clothes. It is the same as you open the opportunity to these people that have such a bad personality to commit sexual harassment to you. And it could happen all the time, as long as they had the opportunity to do so. And even though we all know wearing non-minimal clothes, like the affirmative team said before, can also make sexual harassment happen to us. What if we only use minimal clothes? Think about it. So if you say that clothing has nothing to do with sexual harassment, I think it's wrong and dangerous way of thinking. We have to make an effort to close the opportunity to these people to commit sexual harassment. We have to do prevention efforts because I think it's better to prevent than cure. You can wear all you want, but it's worth to think twice about what you're wearing because you never know what any other people's personality, even all the people that close to us. I think that's all for me. I invited the affirmative teams to give this argument about my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Shofa Narulita as the third speaker from the affirmative team. According to Michael's argument, he found an article which showed that there is a father who do sexual harassment his stepdaughter who only 14 years old because he was tempted by the beauty of the victim's body who often wears minimal clothes when he is at home. Based on from our team, that is the first speaker, say that we strongly disagree. Why? Because sexual harassment and violence actually occur almost every day. And according to Komnas Perempuan, within 24 hours, 35 women were victims of sexual harassment. It showed that what actually must be controlled is the mind of the perpetrator, not the way the victim dresses. Then the second speaker added that KRPA or Koalisi Ruang Publik Aman explained the majority of victims of sexual harassment did not wear revealing clothes when experiencing this unpleasant tragedy. Harassment occurred to those who wore skirt and long pants 18%, hijab 17%, and long sleeved shirt 16%. So, ladies and gentlemen, I can conclude that the statement about sexual harassment occurs by the way the victim is dressed. Was formed just because of the existing paradigm in our society. In fact, the result of the research and several examples of cases that Mahdi, Alycia, and Devia had presented earlier proved that the way the victim dressed really had nothing to do with the occurrence of sexual harassment. So that's the reason why we are from the affirmative team strongly agree why with the motion sexual harassment has nothing to do with the way the victim dresses. I think that's all from me. And, and I will invite the other team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Wahyuni and I'm from the negative team. So we totally disagree that the way of the victim is dressed has nothing to do with the sexual harassment. The first speaker of the affirmative team said the sexual abuse of women has nothing to do with clothes. Let us give an example. As you already know that USA and Arab Saudi have different culture of dressing. Women in Arab Saudi tend to wear unrevealing clothes. It is the opposite in the USA. According to Republica, the USA ranked first in the list 10 countries with the highest rate. If the statement from affirmative team is true, then the USA would just rank in that list. If sexual harassment only has something to do with the perpetrator's bad intention, then at least USA and Saudi Arabia wouldn't have such a huge gap in that rank. What is the reason behind this huge gap? Of course, it is about different culture of clothing. What we want to point out here is that indeed, clothing has something to do with the occurrence of sexual harassment. And also, as our second speaker say, that there is this case where a father who committed sexual violence because his daughter always wore revealing clothes and showed her beauty. From this case, we all know that clothing play a big role in the occurrence of sexual harassment. If we talk about the hijabber that still suffer from the sexual harassment, we can see that nowadays many hijabber wear hijab, but they still showing their body by wearing tight clothes. This thing is also the reason why the number of victims of sexual harassment that wearing hijab is exists. Again, it has something to do with clothes that still show their body. The affirmative team mentioned the case which is about pedophilia, but for your information, according to neurobiology of social behavior, pedophilia is defined as a persistent sexual interest in children. So it is a psychological disorder to have an interest to children or kids. The perpetrator's only main goal is to fulfill their sexual fantasies to the kids and not to an adult. Indeed, it is irrelevant to mention such a case because it is not only about sexual harassment or the perpetrator's bad intention, but there is other background of that case. It is the psychological disorder that the perpetrator suffered. Remember that all crimes occur because of opportunity. The sexual harassment wouldn't happen if the victim didn't try to give those people opportunity to do it by wearing sexy clothes. Once more, I conclude that the way of the victim dress has something to do with sexual harassment. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, that is all from our group. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi